So previously in our third lesson, we have understand the importance of interpreting a graph. So we do graph interpretation in order to determine the relationship between two physical quantities, namely as manipulated variable and responding variable, which are plotted in both y and x-axis. So we do interpretation of graph by looking at the shape of the graph. And from there, we come out with a relationship where either y is directly proportional to, inversely proportional to, increases linearly, decreases linearly, increases or decreases with x. Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera to all teachers and students. Welcome back to my channel, Cikgu Hasnitah. Alhamdulillah, today we will continue with our fourth lesson on scientific investigation, the second part on analyzing graph. Again, this is our content standard 1.2 scientific investigation, focusing on the second learning standard on analyzing a graph to summarize an investigation. Okay students, are you ready to begin with the lesson? If you're good to go, now let's check on this. So what is the importance of doing graph analysis? Well, actually there are 5 important aspects we can find out when doing graph analysis. The first one is of course to state the relationship between two variables, which is MV and RV. How? By interpreting the shape of the graph. Second, we can find a physical quantity which represent by the gradient of the graph, where gradient can be calculated from this formula y2 minus y1 divide x2 minus x1. Okay, let's take a look at an example how to determine a physical or what are the physical quantity represented by the gradient. Example, you are given a velocity time graph. So in this graph, the gradient will represent acceleration, where acceleration is velocity divide time. And the third aspect is to determine area under the graph, which also represent a physical quantity. And this area under the graph is calculated by using the relevant formula according to the shape. For example, if you are given a velocity time graph, the area under the graph will represent a displacement where it has a shape of a trapezium. So we apply a formula for area for trapezium and find the displacement. And number 4 is to do interpolation of graph to determine the value of a physical quantity. For example, when you are given x, y can be determined from this interpolation. Okay, let's check for the example. Look at the graph you are given in this diagram. The first example, they ask you to find y when x is given 1.5. So how we do this? We mark on the x-axis where x is 1.5, and from there we draw a straight line upwards to the line of the graph, and from that point we draw a horizontal line to the y-axis, and from there we determine the value for y is 38. Easy, right? Okay, let's try the second example. Now they give you the value for y, and you have to do interpolation to find what is the value for x. Okay, so let's check where y is 25. So we mark y 25 on the y-axis, shown by the blue arrow. So we draw a straight line from y 25 towards the line of the graph, and from that point we find out x is 2.4. So this is what interpolation, finding another value when you are given the other one. And the last one is to make a prediction by doing extrapolation of graph. Extrapolation of graph means you have to extend the graph line in order to determine the x or y value which is concerned. Let's check for this example. So how do we do extrapolation? By extending the line from the first point. So the extended line is shown by the dashed line. Okay, and what the question is, they ask you to predict what is x when y is 3. So from the extended line, we can see that when y is 3, which is shown by the red arrow, x is 1. Okay. Second question, predict y when x is negative 3.3. So where is the point where x negative 3.3? So it is shown by the blue arrow. And from the extended line, we can find the value for y is equal to 1. Okay. So I guess that's all the time we have for today. And as for the conclusion, today we have discussed the importance of graph analysis, where first, from graph analysis, we can determine the relationship between two variables, which is MV and RV. Second is to determine a physical quantity which represent by the gradient of the graph, and also to determine a physical quantity which represent by the area under the graph. And not to forget to do interpolation of graph in order to determine the value of x or y when given the other value. And last but not least is to make prediction on the value of x or y when the other value is given from extrapolation of graph. And students, please try these exercises on activity 1.3 in your textbook, page 13, and also test your understanding on doing formative practice 1.2 on page 16. And these two exercises will be discussed in our following lesson. So I hope that this lesson helped you in understanding what is the importance of analyzing graph. Thank you very much for joining me today, and don't forget to follow my next class. Till then, Assalamualaikum, have a great day, and see you soon. Belajar demi ilmu, fizik di hatiku.